Hugo, thank you for joining me for the Espresso 4.0 episode. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, Philip. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. Wanted to pick your brain about, having had experience working in Shell and having worked in the background in their IT department and with data analytics. You certainly have some input that I would find very interesting. So why don't we jump into it right now? Something that a lot of companies in oil and gas, as well as mining, as well as steel manufacturing, are working towards is more sustainable operations and processes, right? Production process. Their focus seems to be, a lot of the focus seems to be actually aimed at reducing CO2 emissions. However, there's a lot of other things that they can be working on. And I wanted to ask you, in your experience, what do you think are other initiatives that manufacturers in these industries can work on to reduce or to be more rather sustainable?
Great. Thanks, Philip. Thanks for the question. And maybe a bit of a background. Indeed, I worked a long time with Shell in my last role in data analytics for the last couple of years. I managed a team of over 100 people, and we built all kinds of different data analytics solutions. And one of the more interesting ones that we built actually over the course of a couple of years, together with the data scientist team, is something around inventory optimization. So basically started out as a pilot where we said we took a small portion of the operational scope in upstream in Shell, and we looked at how can we make sure that the different parts that you have in store, stuff breaks from time to time, so you need to have stuff available to replace that. How can you optimize that, right? If in every plant you have a very expensive spare part, that might not be the best thing to do. Yeah, you could maybe say, well, if the plants are very close together, then maybe we can have just one for a couple of locations, and then ship it over when need be. So there was a lot of thinking behind that, and a lot of calculations, and some AI involvement, and it turned out very well. There was actually a saving of a couple of $1 million a year in terms of inventory, and that's also good because it means that you have to have less inventory. You throw away less stuff. If you look at manufacturing sites all over the world, they have lots of spare parts everywhere, and sometimes you have to throw them away at the end of the ride because they're not current anymore, or you're not using them anymore, or they've deteriorated while in storage, right? So that's all from a sustainability perspective not very good. It's much better to actually optimize that, and it makes a lot of economic sense. As I said, a couple of million a year just from that operation in one big area of Shell upstream. But and later on we expanded that to other areas in Shell and used the same thing. And then actually also the what came next is that then the guys started working, and I had a little bit less involvement with that, but they started working on predictive maintenance, right? So how do you predict when certain things break down so that you have enough spare parts then close by, right? So if you know that a particular spare part breaks roughly every 1,000 hours, then by hour 900 you should make sure that you have a spare part close by, or those kind of things. So that was really interesting, and I think there is a lot of waste in terms of inventory, and how can you optimize that, and not just in manufacturing, right? So this is something that works everywhere in logistics, I think.
Yeah, that's actually a very fair point. Just yesterday, I had a conversation with a head of maintenance in a manufacturing company, and they were having a lot of problem with their inventory because not only they had problems with maintenance and a lot of spare parts, they had a lot of necessity for spare parts, but also the supply chain was clogged up. They were getting the spare parts at a later date with a lag, and that was a huge cost because it will cause the downtime to extend and the availability of their assets was just, let's say, suboptimal.
Supply chain is a challenge, I think, in a lot of areas now, right? I mean, you see it in the supermarket. Yesterday, again, I saw that the sunflower oil shelf was, well, not entirely empty, but relatively empty. And these are very trivial, small things that you even notice as a consumer. But the impact for some companies is much wider.
Absolutely. So we actually touched upon a couple of things there of the values that you got from the project that you launched in Shell. What were all the value drivers that kind of pushed you, and some of the ones that you've discovered once you've actually launched and implemented the solution?
Actually, this project started before I joined that team, so I don't know exactly how that came about. But I think the value driver was very interesting, right? There's a lot of very expensive spare parts. If you can reduce the amount that you have to keep in stock, then it improves your cash flow, and that helps a lot. I think what one of the things that really came out of this whole discussion is this element of predictive maintenance that actually they found out through the inventory optimization route by first collecting all that data together. And a lot of that was already in maybe in SAP systems and all these kind of things, but really analyzing it, you find out where the bottlenecks are sometimes. And they can sometimes be really trivial, right? In terms of process, that sometimes things just get stuck because somebody changed the role, and as a result, nobody really changed the process, right? And you figure that out from a different strategy, process mining, which is related but different. In inventory optimization, you found the same kind of thing. And the other thing I think that was interesting is that the whole thing about maintenance and predicting when things break, that actually works very well, much better than I would have thought, right? I would have thought that there would be much more spread in how long parts last, but it's actually, it can be predicted quite accurately, right? You have to have a bit of buffer, but works very well.
Yeah, well, that's something we definitely work here in Wizata with our clients, and it's definitely one of the biggest, let's say, value drivers, at least for clients to digitalize. In terms of one of the first initiatives they go with when it comes to digitalizing is predicting when their machines will fail. Not only do they save on inventory, they save on asset health and lifespan. Obviously, the production keeps going. They can plan the maintenance. They can plan ordering the samples ahead, and so on and so forth. And all of that really depends on the data, which leads me to my next question. There has doubtlessly been a lot of data involved in the project you worked on. What is the value of the data, and what are the best practices on how to manage it so that you get value out of it?
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot of data, and what you generally find is that there's, of course, data in a lot of different kind of systems.
Exactly.
And if you look at a company like Shell, and I think there's a lot of companies in similar kind of boats, there's not a thing as one SAP system or one ERP system. Many companies have a lot of different ones, and that comes from a variety of reasons, right? In the past, every country did the same thing. You have mergers, divestments, different business divisions really taking different paths from time to time, right? I remember at a certain moment we had various flavors of ERPs in Shell for a variety of reasons. I think that will become more standard now. But yeah, how do you pull that all together? How do you then standardize that data? And really requires people who understand both the application, but also people who understand from a business perspective, really understand the data, right? So it doesn't help to have just IT folk. You need business folk to help understand the data. I think the last few years, there has been a lot more emphasis on data governance on a group level in a variety of companies. Shell also one of them. How do you make sure that you all talk the same language?
Yeah.
And ideally, as a company, the same language. But if that's a step too far, then at least within a division, you should talk the same language. So upstream should talk upstream language, and this is not a trivial exercise. This is a lot of work to get that right. But it's a thing to really, you have to get it right in order to maximize the value of the data. Otherwise, you need to. You can sometimes already get some value without really getting the data governance fully right, but it means that you may have to correct that later on, right?
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt. Speaking of this problem of data governance and rather scattered data in different sources, seems to be a consequence of the fact that we're kind of in the very beginnings of data literacy, let's say. Some companies are ahead of in respect to others. But do you feel that there's going to be a shift, that it's just going to be a given that whatever tech solution that you get, you should always keep in mind that your data should somehow feed into some kind of a centralized source of truth? Or do you think the companies will be stumbling on this for years?
No, I think it will get better. I think there's a lot of initiatives been going on in various industries. I know at least that, for instance, in the oil and gas industry, for instance, if you talk about something that's very specific to oil gas subsurface data, there's been a lot of standardization going on, and agreements on how you should name everything, how the data should be structured, etc. Has everybody adopted that yet? No, not yet, because it's going to be very, very expensive to migrate all this data to new solutions. So yeah, there will be a transition period, but I do believe that will that the standardization will continue to grow and play an important role. On the other hand, there's also continuously new solutions being developed and new solutions and new business models being deployed, which means that there will always be some disparity in the data, and that means that you always, if you want to pump data into a central place where you can analyze it and combine different things together, that there will always be a need for some translation, and that's not necessarily bad, right? It's not. It's a bit the same like languages. We're not going to expect that everybody in the world is going to speak the same language, right? And we'll always have interpreters, and that's fine as long as we have good quality interpreters, and that will work. But I think in data you will have the same, right? And it means that what would be good, and I think this is also something that is driven a lot, is that, for instance, there are standardizations in APIs and the way applications and data sources can talk to each other. And this is, again, something that I think is more heavily being adopted by a lot of solution providers.
Gotcha. Okay. Let's bring in a little bit of levity. I'm curious, what if we called you on a Sunday at 2 p.m., what would we be interrupting you in?
Well, it could be different kind of things. I could be mowing the lawn, which I have a very small lawn, but it needs to be done. And I like to be working in the garden a bit in the weekends. It gives me some comfort. Another thing that I could be doing is I could be watching Formula One, which happens a lot at Sunday at 2:00. Another thing, although it's more on a Saturday, but sometimes also on a Sunday, you could find me at a hockey field. Where I would be refereeing a hockey match, because I've taken that up a couple of years ago. Actually, I've never done this as a kid in the past, but I really like it. It's very, very challenging to referee a match of some teenagers.
Yeah, but I can imagine. I mean, especially hockey, which is known to get a little bit rough.
Well, not ice hockey, so field hockey. That's so yeah. No. Ice hockey would be no. That I wouldn't do very quickly. But field hockey doesn't get that rough. Well, it can sometimes. But it's good exercise. So.
Gotcha. Well, I didn't expect it, and I'm glad that was a surprising and interesting answer. Speaking of technology and innovation in the world, what is one of the cooler things you've seen lately in the field of new and innovative technology that really struck you, if anything? It doesn't even have to be like monetized or business.
No, I think it's not even that new and not that innovative, but I think the speed at which mobile has really conquered the world continues to amaze me, right? And how also a lot of companies, but also government organizations, for instance, in the Netherlands, hook into this, right? How they make things suitable for mobile, how the digitalization within the government is going. That is quite amazing. So I think it's maybe one level higher. The speed of digitalization is something that continues to surprise me.
That is quite interesting. In fact, I know I have friends who've been to China. They use, I think, Telegram over there for everything, including giving money to beggars. They send money through an app.
Wow.
That's what they digitalize. That's incredible. All right. Well, thank you, Hugo. That has been very enlightening and very cool conversation. Thank you for your time. And thank you for having coffee with me. I've kind of finished mine, but
me too.
But over the course of the conversation, which means it was a good one. Hope to have you in the future, and let's stay connected.
All right. Thanks.